Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 297 of the Pulp Writer Show. My name is Jonathan Moeller. Today is April the 2nd in 2026, and today we are doing our second audiobook sampler platter for 2026. Easter weekend is coming up, and I am taking some days off for that, so that means we are getting an audiobook sampler platter episode this week. Before we get to that, we will still have Coupon of the Week and an update on my current writing, publishing, and audiobook projects. So with that in mind, let's start with Coupon of the Week. This week's coupon code will get you 25% off the ebooks in the Cloak Game series at my PayHip store. And that coupon code is CloakBook25. And that is CLOAKBOOK25. And as always, the coupon code and the link to my PayHip store will be available in the show notes for this episode. And this coupon code will be valid through April the 13th, 2026. So if you need a new ebook to read this spring, we have got you covered. And now let's have an update on my current writing, publishing, and audiobook projects. I am pleased to report I am done with the rough draft of Blade of Wraiths. That is 107,000 words. It will officially be the longest book in the series to date, and the first one that was over 100,000. I have also written a short story called Halfling Alchemy, and as always, newsletter subscribers will get a free ebook copy of that short story when Blade of Wraiths comes out. So this makes it an excellent time to subscribe to my new release newsletter. I'm currently editing Blade of Wraiths. I'm about, 14% through the first editing pass, so I'm hoping to have it out sometime in the second half of April, if all goes well. I'm also 15,000 words into Dragon Mage, and as soon as Blade of Wraiths is published, Dragon Mage, which will be the 6th Riva Half-Elven series book, will become my main project. I'm hoping to have that out in May. In audiobook news, recording for Wizard Assassin, the 5th book of the Riva series, is done. And as of right now, you can currently get it at my PayHip store, Google Play, and Kobo. It should be available on all the other stores before too much longer. There is a special preview coupon for the week after Easter on my website. That gets you a discount on that audiobook from my PayHip store. So if you are interested in checking that out, check out my website after you listen to this episode. So that is where I'm at with my current writing, publishing, and audiobook projects. And now let's introduce the audiobook samples we'll be listening to this episode. Last time we did a sampler platter episode, we did the samples from the first books in series. So this time we're going to do samples from the second books in series. Our first sample will be from Shield of Darkness, the second book in the Shield War series, as excellently narrated by Brad Wills. The second sample will be from Ghost in the Veils, the second book in the Ghost Armor series, as excellently narrated by Hollis McCarthy. The third sample will be the second book in the Stealth and Spells Online series, specifically Stealth and Spells Online Leveling, and that is excellently narrated by C.J. McAllister. And our final sample will be from Wizard Thief, the second book in the Half-Elven Thief series, as excellently narrated by Leanne Woodward. So that would be it for our episode this week and our update. I hope you found the show interesting. A reminder that you can listen to all the back episodes on https, thepulpwritershow.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review on your podcasting platform of choice. Stay safe, stay healthy. See you all next week. And now let's have our audiobook sampler platter.
Before Ridmark Arban went to war, he talked to his daughter.
"You should bring me with you to the Isle of Cordain,"
said Rowena Arban. They stood in the entry hall of the domus of the constable in Tarleon, sunlight streaming through the windows and falling upon the mosaic floor. Rowena was a wiry girl of about 11, with blue eyes and black hair tied back into a tight braid. She wore a simple green dress and leather sandals, and like both her parents, she had gotten into the habit of carrying a staff with her. "I'm not bringing you into a battle," said Ridmark. "It will be too dangerous." Rowena raised her eyebrows.
"You cannot protect me forever, father."
"Perhaps not," said Ridmark. "But right now I am not taking an 11-year-old girl with me into the deeps."
"I could try to change your mind,"
said Rowena. "You could," said Ridmark. "But even if you did, we would have to change your mother's mind, and we both know that is unlikely."
"True,"
said Rowena with a sigh.
"But you will need me before the end of this, father. Before you face the great spider."
"You've seen it in your visions?" said Ridmark. Rowena possessed the power of the sight more strongly than her mother or anyone else Ridmark had ever encountered. He often regretted that Rowena had been born with that ability. It gave her knowledge beyond her years, and the burden that came with it.
Yes.
Said Rowena.
Not clearly. Not in a way that's understandable.
A look of frustration went over her expression.
But I know you will face a great spider.
The Exarch, said Ridmark, remembering the carnage that the priestess Ziravona had wreaked in southern Taliand in hope of provoking a response from the High King of Andumheim. Well, she had gotten her wish. It might not be to her liking.
Probably,
said Rowena, though she seemed uncertain.
It was a symbol, I think. But I don't know what it symbolizes. The Exarch makes the most sense, but there's something...
She shook her head.
I don't know, Father, I just don't know. But there is something strange about the Isle of Cordain.
Ridmark shrugged. The Isle used to be a dwarven kingdom named called Ascordain, allied with the High Elves of Cather Eraniel. The dwarves somehow destroyed themselves, the High Elves and their dark elven enemies all at once. Whatever weapon they used for that must have left echoes in the site.
Perhaps,
said Rowena.
But you are at least taking me with you to Centaura.
Yes, said Ridmark. Queen Mara and Prince Jago will arrive with your brother at Centaura in a few days, and you can stay with them. Until then, I will ask Lady Mariah Lordsbane to look after you.
I like Lady Mariah. She's very clever.
Rowena paused.
But I should stay in Centaura until you return. When the Exarch realizes you have tricked her, she will march with her entire army against you. Father, you will need my counsel.
Ridmark took a deep breath, weighing his answers. Rowena was his daughter, and he wanted to protect her from any danger. Both his sons would be going into danger. Gareth as a sword-bearer and the Lieutenant Constable of Talion, and Joachim as the court magistrius for Queen Mara. Yet like her brothers, Rowena possessed great gifts, and if Ridmark was to pull off his plan, if he really was to cross the deeps and catch the Exarch off guard on the Isle of Cordain, he needed every weapon and tool at his disposal, because he knew one day the Heptarchy would return in force. Perhaps not in Ridmark's lifetime, and maybe not even in Rowena's. Yet the spiderling priestesses who ruled the Heptarchy lived for centuries, and they devised plans that could take millennia to fulfill. A delay of 60 or 70 years meant little to them, save as additional time to prepare for a new invasion. Ridmark did not want his children to live in an Andumheim ruled by the cruelty and bloodlust of the Seven Temples. Rowena's visions had guided him before, had even saved his life. He might well need her power before this was over. Perhaps, said Ridmark. We shall see. Rowena nodded as if he had agreed with her, which he hadn't. She might have looked more like her father than her mother, but like Caliand, Rowena was very good at getting her way in the end.
Kena gazed at the wrapped bundle in the back of the wagon. Thankfully, no blood had leaked from it, though perhaps she shouldn't have worried. Only a few people in Mallory would have recognized the dark green liquid as blood. The wagon itself was nothing remarkable, a bit old and worn, though none of the planks had rotted and the wheels were in mostly good shape. A pair of placid draught horses pulled the vehicle, the animals well accustomed to the noises and smells of the imperial capital. The only thing unusual was the bundle resting in the back. It was almost the precise size and shape of the corpse of a grown man. To be fair, it was a corpse, just not of a grown man, or a grown woman, or indeed anything human. Kena didn't know what it was, but she intended to find out. "Will there be anything else, Countess?" said her seneschal, a Sedaic man named Talzane. He wore the formal black clothes of an Aimarian servant. Combined with his wan complexion, the outfit always made him look a bit corpse-like. "No, thank you," said Kena, I should be back in time for dinner with Lord Kylon and Lady Calliope." "Yes," said Talzane. He cleared his throat. "That ought to be interesting." "You have a gift for understatement," said Cana. Kylon and Calliope had their own errands in the city. When Calliope had fled New Caia with her children ahead of the cult of Radamathar, she had taken some money and baggage with them, but she had been forced to leave it behind at the wrecked warship near the ocean harbour of Malaray. Fortunately, the innkeeper had kept all of Calliope's baggage on hand, partly because Anastasios was an honest man, and partly because he feared the vengeance of Calliope's father. Lysicus Stormblade had a formidable reputation, even among the Chiratians living in Malaray. So Calliope had gone with some of Cana's servants to retrieve her baggage and buy such things as Nicarian and Zoe might need. Kylon himself was keeping watch over the twins. Cana suggested that he take them riding to see the city, and he agreed. The children, in awe of the father they had never known they had made no protest. Ardok, Sethrosa, and the other cultists were still out there. But if they tried to attack the children in Kylon's presence, they would regret it bitterly, if briefly. And that left Cana free to deal with the thing in the bed of the wagon.
Finding Magistrius Alwyn proved a little more difficult than Carver expected. Duxbors had ridden to war against the Morites alongside Lord Ridmark, and so the Magistrius had accompanied his ducks to battle. It took a bit of fast traveling over the foothills west of Castradurius, which prompted 2 battles against wandering patrols of Morites, but finally they located where the army had camped. Carver had seen actual army encampments several times during the war, and they were almost always large collections of prefabricated buildings raised in haste, often surrounded by a security fence topped with razor wire, and patrolling drones to watch for Zianzar ambushers. By contrast, the army camp of Andamheim was a small city of tents lined up in orderly rows. The infantry had canvas tents, while the lords and knights had larger pavilions. The footmen had dug a ditch and raised a small earthwork wall facing the west. Despite the rumors that the author of the original books was a failed historian, Carver suspected that the books and the game had only a tenuous connection at best to actual history. Yet he supposed this camp was closer to what war had been before humanity had developed industry, when muscle power was more important than it was in the modern age of starships and railguns and plasma weaponry. Though maybe the invention of industry had been the first step on the path that led to the Zianzar. He pushed aside the musings as useless.
"Man, there are a lot of side quests here," said Min-Maxer 69, looking around as they walked down the main aisle of the camp past the pavilions of the lords and knights. It seemed that every other NPC lord they passed had a quest prompt hovering over his head like a golden exclamation point, indicating that the NPC had a quest available. Quite a few player characters were running around, talking to the NPCs. Given that the Castradurius World event had been a major news item on the streaming sites, it made sense that players would start converging on the area.
"Suppose we'll skip all of those side quests, depending on where this next map piece is," said Battledwarf 873.
"Maybe not," said Carver. "The map piece might be in a high-level area. Like, the game recommends you don't go near the Kazaluskan Forest or the Northern Wilderland until you're at least level 50. If the map piece is in Erd Morlamok or someplace like that, we might need to do some level grinding first."
Min-Maxer 69 let out his braying laugh.
"Man, I think the minimum level to even survive in the Erd Morlamok zone is like 150, 175, something like that. I hope that map piece isn't in Erd Morlamok, because if it is, we aren't seeing it for a long time."
After asking a few NPCs for directions, they found Duxbor's pavilion, his banner flying from a pole before the tent. 2 of the Dux's men-at-arms guarded the entrance, but Carver spotted Magistrius Olwen sitting on a wooden stool outside of the pavilion, drinking from a cup of wine and watching the bustle of the camp.
"Ah,"
said the old man with a smile, getting to his feet. His robe was still mostly white, though the dust of travel marked the hems and sleeves.
"The daring young adventurers who rescued me from her dormant car. I'm glad to see you came through the Morite attack on Castradurius unharmed."
There was a brief pause in his speech, no doubt while his controlling algorithm accessed their player histories and calculated whether or not they had been present at the attack.
"I am told that you fought with great valor against the enemy. Have you come to offer your aid to the Ducks and Lord Ridmark? And Amhaim needs every sword and every brave heart in this hour of peril."
Riva opened her eyes. It was time. She looked over the water and listened to the gentle splashing of the oars. Night covered the city of Tar-Carmathion, though the moon of fire hung in the sky like a glaring crimson eye and cast its dim red glow over everything. Not many boats were on the river Carmath this time of night, though the few that did carried lanterns on the prows and sterns to avoid collisions. For obvious reasons, Ashur's boat did not have any lights. Riva stood up, bracing her hand against the gunwale. Ashur's boat was built for ferrying passengers and small amounts of cargo, 20 feet long from stern to bow. 4 of Ashur's sons, all of them strong young Orcish men, worked the oars, moving the boat at a good clip through the water despite the current. Ashur himself stood at the stern, working the tiller. He was a middle-aged Orcish man, his gray-greenish skin leathery, his tusks thick and yellow, his hair a ragged mane of iron gray. "Lord's Island," said Ashur, his voice a deep basso rumble. Riva nodded and looked at the lights that shone in the darkness ahead. The boat had launched from its quay in the western city. Ashur and his sons had taken the boat up the channel between Lord's Island and Slaver's Island, the dark mass of the haunted island rising to the east. Finally, they swung around to the north, moving closer to the illuminated palaces and mansions of Lord's Island. Ashur and his sons had rowed on the river Carmath for 8 years, and they knew every hazard and every hidden obstacle in the waters. Lord's Island shone in the darkness, towers and spires rising from the palaces and mansions that filled the island, though all of them were by law required to be lower than the great central tower of the governor's palace, or at least what had been the governor's palace. Many of the lords and merchant princes of the island were wealthy enough to hire conclave mages to cast spells of light over their mansions, letting them shine like beacons in the night. Riva suspected half the reason the governor had never protested was because ships could use the glow of Lord's Island to navigate by night, a sort of backup lighthouse to augment the great lighthouse on Porter's Island to the south. The light also had the useful quality of making it all the harder for thieves to break into the mansions after dark, which, after all, was the entire reason that Riva, Ashur, and his sons were there. A seawall surrounded the entirety of Lord's Island, and many of the palaces and great houses had been built right up to its edge. The mansion of the elven noble Lord Keldron occupied a corner of the seawall, which gave his windows a view of both the eastern city and the river Carmath. It also meant it was a climb of 50 feet from the river to the windows on the northern and eastern sides of the grand mansion. The main doors and the servants' doors to the mansion were guarded and warded, and all the windows on the western and southern faces of the mansion were protected with magical wards that would send a deadly jolt of lightning through any intruders. But the windows facing the river were not warded. After all, there was no way that anyone could swim the river and climb the sheer plane of the seawall and the mansion's side. Absolutely no way. Or so Lord Keldron and his guards believed. Riva hoped to prove them wrong.